So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, hi everyone. I'm Christine and I work at Mastercard. I lead our offers platform globally. So really, what does that mean? It really allows me and my team to work with brands to help drive consumer value and also kind of that brand affinity that all brands are looking for.
Yeah. So how does this particular role fit into the broader performance marketing ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think offers, I like to say, is always a win-win for everyone that's participating. And I think specifically at MasterCard, we have the unique position that sits between the brand and the consumer. And in my role specifically, or even like when I think about it from a product and solution perspective, it's all about driving relevant content for the right consumer at the right time. That really is, a critical point, I think, these days in terms of any content that is being served. It needs to be personalized. Some consumers expect it to be hyper-personalized depending on the brand that you are. So that really is kind of what MasterCard does when it comes to offers.
You hit on a good touch about like the difference between personalization and a hyper-personalization. Like, is there such a thing as too personalized?
I think it can be a paradox sometimes. I do think that consumers expect personalization from all brands that they're interacting with. I think there are certain brands that probably have an inch more of, I'll say, expectations from their consumers. And I think this is, kind of the opportunity that allows brands to really interact and refine their approach when it comes to, what they are personalizing with consumers. To take it back to offers, right, it, really sits kind of in the lower funnel of, where, full marketing strategies are. So from a performance marketing perspective, it's all about kind of getting refined in, what types of offers are you actually giving, right? Being able to understand basket size or the right category mix. Is it about maybe even thinking through what is the incentive that is going to drive propensity to spend? So I think being able to understand maybe what you are trying to personalize for the consumer, I think is critically important. I think channel matters as well, right, in terms of hyper-personalization. Is it, a channel that is kind of constantly active and constantly kind of being mobile, or is it kind of a bit of a static channel where maybe, the elements of personalization don't have to be as rich and deep?
Yeah. And so as we think about this broad world of both the personalizing the offers and then like the constructs itself, right? I mean, we're inundated with offers. I think anyone can open their inbox and there's like 15 different promo values that they're trying to get. Like, how do we think about the most compelling offer constructs that are driving customer engagement and measurable ROI?
I think one, I'll say, that is kind of a bit of a standout would probably be card linking technology. I think card linking technology truly is kind of an inherent value for all players in the ecosystem. So, I can start with the consumer where it's this seamless experience, right? There's an offer tied exactly to their, preferred card on file or preferred top of wallet card. And that allows them to kind of go through, scroll, see what they like, add the offer to their card, and shop seamlessly, right? They're not going into a store and thinking, where's my coupon code? Or is there a QR code that I need to bring in? Or do I need to tell the cashier at point of sale, like, I have this offer? It really is a bit more intuitive in that case and seamless, which again, I think in the rise of digital, everything needs to be a little bit more seamless, because if you're not seamless, someone else is going to be seamless, and you've kind of lost share of voice in that case. I think on a merchant perspective, why card linking is super attractive is because it allows them to follow their money, their ad dollars, their campaign budget, being able to kind of tie back, if I've invested this amount of money into a campaign, I can see who spent at my store. I can see who's engaged with the brand, who's engaged with my logos. We talk about clicks, impressions, all of that. So I think that has proven really strong ROI for, a retailer or a merchant. And then I think on the publishing side, or the distributor, the one that really owns that experience for the consumer, it's all about, again, that top of brand preference, right? Being able to pull their card out, recognize, there's an offer tied to this card that I'm about to make a purchase with. I can constantly go back into this kind of experience to see what offers are available. I think offers, again, has been a mechanism that has really informed consumer purchasing. I think we did some research, last year that showed, 51% of purchases are made based on the offers that are available, right? Wow. So again, it's really that, again, bottom funnel conversion, right? Which again, tying it back to kind of the full funnel marketing perspective has really been proven to work. And again, I think it's maybe a channel or maybe a mechanism that kind of gets overlooked, right? But it is content at the end of the day, right? Yeah. Again, consumers, you mentioned, are inundated with brands and logos and content wherever they're looking, even like looking right now. So again, being able to make it a more effective and seamless experience, I think, is critical for all players.
Well, and it's not just seamless, but it sounds like simplicity, right? Do you think we kind of overcomplicate this idea of like offers and even more generally rewards-based programs?
Yeah, I think if the mechanism of an offer is working, then I think where brands can maybe spend more of their time is the approach, right? So is it more about, I want to drive maybe multi-visit stores, right? Or is it truly higher incentive because they have greater propensity to spend with basket size? I think being able to fine tune and refine the approach is critical. I don't know that mechanisms need to change. At the end of the day, offers is a very broad term. Marketing is also a very broad term. To a consumer, it's an offer at the end of the day, right? Like they don't know, right, that a discount code differs from a card-linked offer or some sort of multi-store visit, right? Yeah. What they're seeing is I'm getting value at the end of the day. That is important to me. The brands recognize it, and that's why I'm continuing to use it.
Yeah, we thought about this all the time at Arby's when we would give away like free fries with purchase. And I remember leadership would be like, we just did that. And I'm like, consumers don't care. Like they just want the value that it's getting. So it's like, don't fix it if it's not broken kind of mentality.
Yeah, I really do agree with that. I think if it's not broken, don't fix it. I think, again, maybe, the shift from free fries to maybe a free beverage is, making sure that you're not setting the expectations so inherently where now it's like part of the value prop and they're kind of coming back for just that. I think that's what, refining the approach means, right? Because maybe you want to bring in seasonality, right? Because maybe, again, there's a new beverage that you're testing or, again, tying back, free fries based on like, a local team that's winning a game or something, right? Kind of driving that encouragement. The actual mechanism, though, hasn't changed, right? You're giving something for a consumer to interact with your brand.
Well, and the frequency is such a good point because you don't want to get into the habit of over discounting or like encouraging or thinking customers should only come to you when they have an offer, right? It's like no one wants to be like the DSW of their industry. No offense to DSW, I love them, but like I will only go when I have $20 off. Like that's the only thing that I'm going to do.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I think brands are always challenged to think about how do I be less reactive to my consumers, and consumers are always trying to also think, how do I become less reactive in some cases, right? Consumers want to be loyal to brands. They want to be proactive. They want to show their loyalty, their advocacy. And I think you bring up a good point where you don't want to dilute the offering to the point where there's really going to be no value, right? Because now consumers are only coming to you for that one moment in time, right? I think that's where loyalty kind of gets missed a little bit, where one could argue they're loyal because they're coming to shop with me, but it's a very reactive approach.
Yeah, so like, do they become loyal to the brand or do they become loyal to the discount?
Exactly. So I think, it's one of those things where it's a fine balance. I think being able to understand consumer sets, right? Are you trying to engage lapsed consumers, right? And what is that shift going to take versus someone who is, net new, just interacting with your brand, right? Yeah. Where they, again, look like the shoppers that you have, but haven't fully converted yet. Yeah.
Let's talk about the personalizing for a little bit, right? What are ways that we can really start unlocking our first-party data or supplement our first-party data to truly create that kind of personalized experience?
So I think brands are still grappling with how to use first-party data. I think one thing that probably remains true is if brands are not using their first-party data, they're probably missing out on, deepened engagement with consumers. I think the luxury of first-party data is that it's deterministic, right? You don't need to guess, right? You know that the consumer has done X, which is that, therefore, it should be informing your strategy. I think finding a healthy balance of zero-party data, right, which is, again, intent, right, is always a complementary data set that brands should be thinking of. I think marrying the two to really, again, have more of this like 360 view of a consumer. Because I think, again, deterministic is, we don't know why, we just know that it happened, right? And I think marrying in intent data, right? So whether that be, I like offers like these, or, I don't interact with offers like these, right? Being able to kind of unpack why, right? Is it truly the basket size is too large? Is it because it's only online offers and consumers, may have an adverse reaction to putting their card, online? Being able to kind of unpack and distill why, I think, is critically important. But I do think that data strategies alone cannot just rely on first-party data. I think it's I would say, somewhat important and critical for success, but I don't know that it's going to be 100% weighted to just first-party data.
And the scale alone, it's like, how much of our first-party data is actionable, usable, statistically significant, that we can action upon itself, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also just a very singular view, right, of, again, how a consumer's interacting with your brand. It doesn't pull in other, I'm going to say, factors, right, or kind of other elements, right, that could be informing kind of purchasing decision.
It almost kind of like cuts off the upper funnel aspect of, if we're only leveraging our first-party data, we're just going to continue to pull from the same pool that we always have.
Yeah, and then you talk about kind of the limited scale that's been happening, right? So again, it's, how are you keeping it relevant for the consumer, right? You talk about change, right? Consumers are always changing. While first-party data, the elements aren't changing, I do think that it's critically important to, again, refine and constantly kind of learn from, how your consumers are interacting with your brand.
What do you think are some of the most important signals we should be looking at within our first-party data sets to inform our personalization strategy?
So I think, again, it depends on really like the goals of the brand, right? So, I think it's fair to say that conversion or spend is always going to be critically important. It's somewhat maybe the end goal, right? But it may not be the first kind of 2 or 3. I think, again, leaning into first-party data, that is not going away anywhere. I think, this is not a discussion to say, remove all first-party data from your strategy and kind of lean into other ones. I think it's being able to find complementary, right, data sets that make sense. So whether that be kind of audience perspective, right, or being able, again, you as a brand to interact in a more zero-party day, whether that's, surveys or kind of, again, having a consumer interact with, do you like offers like this, right? And if you don't like offers like this, then there's something that we're missing the mark on, right? The good example I often use is consumers always tell us they want restaurant offers or they want kind of QSR offers. Yet when you look at their spend, it's all grocery offers. So it's a very contradictory kind of, story that they're telling us, right? But so knowing that, scanning kind of the or scanning the, food offers, are we missing the mark somewhere there because maybe the restaurants don't resonate in terms of cuisine style? Are we missing the mark because the basket size is too large, right? So, and those are things that you have control to help change, right, and to modify. So being able to kind of test a little bit, right? So again, we can't see what is happening over in grocery, right? But maybe it's less about, offering sushi and Chinese food, and maybe it's more about Italian or Indian as an example, right? Because again, these are broad categories and again, you need to kind of balance scale and reach with everything that you're offering. But I think that's, being able to kind of have brands refine and test, right, to learn, get more prescriptive, I think is going to be the key to kind of success in the future.
Is there, as we think about marrying all of these data sources that we have, right, is there an efficient way to really do this? Or like, how do we start by prioritizing and kind of consolidating all of the different inputs that we would take?
And well, I'm going to say it depends on the organization.
The most political response ever.
Right. I think it's one of those things where look at what you have and look at what you need. I do think that again, relevancy is key here, right? There's a reason why there's certain brands that partner with certain brands in terms of the offerings that they have, right? I think that's important and that's key. It's not just about taking random data sets from anywhere that's available and kind of marrying it with your first party data. I think it needs to be very complementary in what you are offering. I think being able to understand a brand's DNA, understand kind of who they are going after, their ideal client or, consumer set, and kind of thinking broadly across other brands, how do we bring that together?
Yeah.
Again, because you don't want to, I think the thing with data, right, again, is one of those things where from a consumer perspective, it's their own. We should be using it in a very secure and personal way. And you want to make sure that it's very complementary to everything that you have, because the minute that it can be misused, I think the trust factor becomes even more important, right? And then you've kind of lost the consumer trust.
Yeah. As we start looking ahead into what may or may not happen as things unfold over the next 12, 18 months, right? I'm going to ask you to pull out your crystal ball, your magic 8-ball. Like, what trends do you see in the personalized offer space that you're kind of keeping an eye on?
So to me, I think I go back to, I don't think the mechanism of offers or personalized offers is going to change. I do think channel is going to change. We heard Jeff talk a little bit about kind of the rise of RMN or retail media networks. I think this is going to be, it's emerging. I think it's going to still be emerging. And I think brands are thinking, how am I driving stronger engagement on these channels, but maybe more so in a tactical way. I'm interested to kind of see how personalized offers can kind of sit within that channel, because again, it's very new, I would say, for where card-linked offers sits today, right? Very kind of bottom funnel, kind of really more so in the conversion channel. I think that's something that I'm keen to learn more about, and also very interested to see how, you're still driving relevancy from a content perspective, but also driving relevancy from a channel perspective.
Mm-hmm. As we think about like RMNs, the rise of emerging networks, like how are you thinking about measuring success? Like, is it just redemption rate? Is it just total sales? Are there other metrics that you're kind of keeping an eye on?
I think things that we're, probably trying to keep a pulse on, right, is things that, matter to advertisers or retailers, right, which is impressions and clicks, right? I think today, the offers is a form of an ad unit in some case, right? It's logos, it's, clear call to action, there's attribution tied to it, right? These are all things that marketers are kind of vying for and looking for. I think that's not going to change when you kind of move into other channels. I think metrics will change, yes, but I don't think that the crux of it is going to change drastically. Everyone's looking for conversion at the end of the day. Everyone's looking for spend at the end of the day. I think it depends on, again, where the intersection of the content and channel sit. And I'm curious to kind of, again, learn more. I think it's a very new and emerging space for offers specifically. Retail media has been around for a while, right? Yeah. So again, it's how are we, or, I guess maybe the question is, how is retail media optimizing the opportunity for offers to kind of be in that space?
Yeah, they just called it something different 10 years ago before it was retail media at this point. Yeah. I think we're all struggling with this kind of ditch to ditch between like branding and performance, right? And this is what marketers do as an industry, is it's like, oh, it's all about upper funnel, and now it's all about the conversion. Where is the middle ground? Like, have you seen offers be able to drive long-term brand consideration versus just like an immediate point of purchase?
I think naturally and natively offers kind of is more on the long-term side. I do think, it is a mechanism for acquisition, but I think what every brand wants is long-term value, right? Or lifetime value in that case. And I think, again, offers can be that mechanism. I think it's about finding that sweet spot of what it is. Offers, card-linked offers really sits in the lower funnel strategy, right? I don't think it's moved overly too much in kind of the upper funnel pieces, but it's interesting to see kind of where it could go in some cases. I think it's needed in some cases especially when you talk about scale, right? Because there's probably a whole host of people we're missing or brands are missing outside of this channel. I think it kind of goes down to what is the brand or what is the campaign actually vying for, right? awareness is not going to go anywhere, right? Every brand needs awareness, and that's going to stay top of, as part of every single marketing kind of effort. But I think what's going to be interesting is kind of the shift in budget, in campaign budget, to seeing where, I guess, marketers are putting their ad dollars. I think, again, if we go back to lower funnel, it's a proven channel for offers to drive that conversion. Now I think it's more about how can we drive greater reach and scale, kind of moving up.
Yeah. And how are we thinking then about positioning these offers to drive more to continue to evolve our loyalty programs to be genuinely valuable to our consumers, right? Will we ever get to a point where it's it has to be something other than just offers as part of this loyalty scale to continue to drive that consideration and immediate conversion point?
I would say yes. I think, again, if you go back to loyalty, right, every brand has some sort of loyalty aspect to it, right, that continues to drive consumers back. Yeah. I think offers, again, is very much part of that story because it's all about kind of recognizing where someone is and what's going to drive that spend. It's, I would say loyalty right now is also a bit of a complex kind of, ecosystem, right? Because it's how do you continue to ensure value without diluting it, but also making sure your consumers are happy, right? It's a happy mix of all of them. I think that within the offers world, right, I continue to go back to kind of that relevancy, right, whether it be relevancy in terms of content, but also relevancy in terms of channel as well, and kind of where it's being presented.
Yeah. A common pushback that we see when running offers is transaction cannibalization. It's oh, they would have come and converted anyway, right? Are there ways that we can really think about finding those net new audiences so we're not taking away from a full price point that they would have purchased anyway?
I think, again, looking at more intent data, right? I think, again, not overly, again, just leaning into kind of first-party data, right? Again, it's, who are you going after, right? Is it net new, or is it kind of, re-engaging some sort of lapsed consumer? And I think from there, it's, your strategies are going to be completely different in terms of how you go after them. I think with intent data, right, you probably have stronger pull when it's acquisition because, again, that someone's kind of searching or looking for something, or, they have high propensity because you were right place, right time type of thing. And then I think, again, from a lapsed consumer, right, it's what is that engagement going to be? Those ones are probably a little bit tougher, right, because they weren't going to spend per se, right? But again, I think having a full 360 view of a consumer, right, is critically important. I think leaning into what you have already from a first-party data perspective, leaning into complementary zero-party data, again, is again going to help inform these kind of, business decisions.
Yeah. Last question before we'll open it up to the audience Q&A. Is there one thing you wish we would just stop doing with either personalization or offers?
That's a good question. I think no, because I think consumers expect it. I think maybe what at an industry level we could probably do, or maybe kind of put some effort and time in, is really what does it mean, right? Because I think personalization is very broad and offers is very broad too. And then it kind of all goes back to relevancy, right? But really, what is relevancy from a consumer perspective on a more scalable level? Yeah. So I think it's needed in kind of all loyalty strategies. I don't think that's going away anywhere. I think it's a common struggle, though, when depending on the brand that you're speaking to, how they define personalization, how they define an offer. So I think maybe regulating or standardizing nomenclature, or kind of establishing kind of what is the benchmark to help kind of with the apples to apples comparison, right? Because I think every tactic is so nuanced, and then it's this one thing was off, and then therefore it kind of drove the metric completely different in a different way.
Yeah, nothing exists in a vacuum anymore at this point.
Correct.
Yeah. Questions from the audience?
Don't be shy. Even though Erin can't see you, she will call on you. She'll just point and say, do something, and you'll have to do it. Questions from the audience? Oh, Erin. Oh, we got one from Jeff. Thank God. All right, as we go here, just let us know who you are and where you're from before you're asking your question. But we know you, but tell us again for the live stream, the thousands watching on the live stream.
thousands globally. Jeff Alderman from ad.com. So just curious, though, as far as if you're seeing any major shifts or trends globally as well compared to the U.S. when you're talking about offers.
Yeah, so I think globally, when we look at offers, I would say, within North America, card linking offers is a very, I would say, mature market. There's a ton of brands today that kind of enable or unlock that kind of card linked offers experience. I think as you move kind of around the world, you're not seeing it as prominent. I think there are still markets that are very fixated on kind of a mechanism of a QR code or kind of maybe in wallet, right? Which is not, I would say, any different. It's just a different offer, right? It's tied differently. It's measured differently. But I do think that it's fit for purpose based on kind of what is the rising payment channel in said market. So if we think about Asia Pacific as an example, right, still very much kind of wallet infused, very super app infused, depending on kind of the country you're in. I think all of that kind of needs to live in that channel for a consumer. I think over here in North America, it's a little bit more scattered. One could argue it's a bit fragmented, right? Depending on, you go here for offers, but then you go over here to get kind of your restaurant discounts, and then you have another channel over here, right, where you can go kind of get your retail offer. So that fragmentation's, I would say, a little bit more apparent over here in North America, less apparent maybe globally, depending on where you are.
Oh, right here.
Hi, Tabitha. I'm with GE. Are you beginning to see any kind of emerging shifts in discounts or offers with the tariffs impending?
No, not yet. And the main reason being is I think if I think about brands today, a lot of that is still unknown for them, right? Which makes it unknown, in terms of how they're interacting. The world needs to continue, right? I think businesses still need to kind of reach their goals as best as possible. I think that right now we're all kind of in this waiting or holding pattern, right? And so it'll be interesting to kind of see if there is going to be a shift down the road.
Now we've woken up the
Yes,
audience. It always takes one person to ask, and then everyone just warms up.
The coffee's hitting.
Yeah, my brain is finally, back to speed. Hi, I'm Jenna. I'm from Motel 6. So my question is, with the rise of things like digital payment, Apple Wallet, Google Pay, are you seeing a difference in trend data for offers from a traditional card user versus somebody who's paying digitally? And if there's anything you can share about, if any insights about those types of audiences that are using one or the other?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I think the consumer behavior is shifting. I think what consumers are appreciating is that it's just more in path of point of purchase. I think, again, going back to some research that we did, right, a consumer's actively making a decision based on the offer that is available to them, right? And that holds a lot of weight, particularly if you think about someone who wants to go buy shoes, right? What offers are available from a retailer perspective? I think the being in the right channel is critically important because, again, it kind of goes back to that kind of relevancy, that efficiency, right, and that convenience factor that consumers all expect, right? And they're going to tell you that's quote unquote personalization. That is, what it means to me. So I think for, brands and even I would say, product leads like myself, really thinking about new capabilities to kind of help ensure content is being delivered in the right channel or more channels, maybe is the more appropriate word, at point of sale for a consumer.
I thought we had one more. Yep. Oh, I see you, Zach. We will get to your question.
Hi, I'm Liz. I'm from Monks. Question, every single website I go on, as soon as I get on there, it's like, give me your email and you get 10% off. And I feel like everyone kind of just expects that. Are there offers you see that are more creative or that brands are using offers as a way to kind of stand out and differentiate themselves?
So I think one offer type that I think continues to show long-term value for brands is kind of this like multi-store visit, right? So you don't get the incentive right away. One would argue that it's delayed gratification, right? And, do consumers like that? I think a bit of gamifying that experience is something that keeps the consumer engaged and excited about. So I think multi-store visit is one that's interesting, where again, it's, you earn the incentive after you've done 3 visits, right? Or you've made, 3 online purchases. That can also extend to total basket size, right? So in total, right, as long as you spend $100, right, depending, within a specific time period, I think is also another interesting one. It allows the consumer to make more of a concerted effort to engage with your brand, which leads to stronger advocacy, which really in turn is loyalty.
We probably have time for one more. Did you say there was another?
We do. I have it
Okay,
right over here.
there he is. Okay. Last one. Make it good.
Thank you. I'm Zach with Harmland Media. I just wanted to ask, have you noticed any trends in how younger generations are interacting with offers? Is there any kind of emerging learnings there?
I wouldn't say from a generational thing. I think if anything, a younger generation grew up in a world of personalization, right? They again don't know a world with, I would say when they don't see it, they know it, versus I think for certain demographics, right, growing up in a world where things just kind of, all of a sudden got a little bit more easier, a little bit more efficient, right? I think for the is a bit more kind of, you can understand the different change. I think from a younger demographic or younger generation, again, they're really setting the tone that everything needs to be critically personalized. It's not, again, I would say a consideration. It needs to be inherently part of anyone's kind of brand offering at this point. So again, leaning into first-party data so that any engagement that you have with the consumer is leaning into behavior that, they've proven to you and are somewhat expecting.
Christine, thank you so much for kicking us off this morning.
Thank you for having me.